betcha, you betcha, you betcha. You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha. You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha. You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha.
I'm back, you betcha. I'm on that, you betcha. Get that, you betcha. Don't understand me, you betcha. Bet your bottom dollar, you betcha. Fuzzy and raspy, you betcha. Dark force, you betcha. I'm the source, you betcha. Running my course, you betcha. She's a Porsche, you betcha. She's sweating me, you betcha. You better see me in my prime like Raspy forever. Very clever, you betcha. The Jack of 100, you betcha. And I'm Omega the Rebel, ladies in cute sweaters while I'm spending my cheddar. It can't get no better just to finish at the top. So my mind never stops, just keep finishing rhymes on the #1 spot in the dot. Borough, VP, and Goodwood, and all over everywhere, you betcha. Dawes Road, you betcha. Chester Lee, you betcha. Malvern, you betcha. Galloway, you betcha. Weston Road, you betcha. Regent Park, you betcha. Flemington Park, you betcha. Bremerton Drive, you betcha. Guess who's getting his keys back, you betcha. Trying to score a new Cadillac, you betcha. And that's that, you betcha. And this, you betcha.
You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha. You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha. You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha. You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha.
You betcha, don't know this. You betcha, I make you take notice. You betcha, can't see this. You betcha, can't be this. Microphones on jack, take a stack. The usual, can't pay me to act. I'm pure cognac, fresh up out the lack. Like a cool summer, so what? I rap, is my first track. Then my heart is cold. You betcha, oh these still gold. Records understood. You betcha, should be diamond. You betcha, we the only cats rhyming. You betcha, candlelit dinner, what she with? You betcha, rose petal happiness. You betcha, and I'm the only one she with. You betcha, and she got expensive taste. She betcha, combination to the safe. You betcha, so don't let it go to waste. You betcha, you gotta come get a taste. You betcha, of me, the C. First name is Courtney. Get it? I'm the OTR on a spree fa. Colored rocks that sparkle, need red and yellow like a Charizard. Spitting fire, supper mellow. Raspy, all about Serena, you betcha. Fuzzy in her brand new arena, you betcha. She shake it like jello, you betcha. I'm just saying hello, you betcha. Come get a taste, you betcha. Don't let it go to waste, you betcha. I am, you betcha, the man, you betcha.
You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha. You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha. You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha. You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha.
Cops are your mama. I don't know who's more my business. Follow me like I'm a person of interest. You betcha, you betcha. Swallow this dick like it's the best. You betcha, you betcha. I love you for a long time. Need a wife on the grind. Niggas that oppose us, your life's on the line. You betcha, you betcha. You always been scared of the dark. You betcha. Whenever it sparks, you betcha. Be prepared of Victoria Park, you betcha, you betcha. You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha. You betcha, you betcha. betcha, you betcha, you betcha. You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha. You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha. You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha. You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha. You betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha, you betcha.